The body that had been found had been identified as Elaine O'Hara.
This became one of the biggest police investigations in the history of Ireland.
We didn't have any witnesses. We didn't have any murder weapon. But the discovery of the S&M paraphernalia in the reservoir significantly influenced the direction of the investigation.
A friend of Elaine, she said that she was seeing a married architect and that he used to cut her.
He was texting her constantly. He seemed to be putting pressure on her to escalate the violence that he was inflicting on Elaine.
The horror of the manipulation and harassment and psychological warfare perpetrated on Elaine O'Hara, who was a vulnerable woman. She was being tortured.
On looking over the bridge into the Dwyer Reservoir, I could see a mobile phone.
It was found that there was one contact number. That contact number was saved as MSTR, so master.
The male in the CCTV footage from Elaine O'Hara's apartment matched the image of Graham Dwyer.
All the arms of this massive investigation, they built up a massive comprehensive picture of every aspect of his life.
It was only a matter of time before all the dots would be connected. The net was closing on Graham Dwyer. The evidence we had so far was not enough to get the charge of murder against Graham Dwyer. We needed evidence to link Graham Dwyer to the phones and prove that it was him that was sending the text messages to Elaine O'Hara.
My tasking on this investigation was to see if I could identify who the user of the master phone was. Each network has their own masts around the country and the phone will use the cell site. So I started looking at occasions where the master phone used cell sites. There was a cell site used to the east of Galway City, followed by a cell site to the southeast of Dublin city centre, 2 hours and 11 minutes later. From my knowledge of travelling across the country, the only way to do this is in a private car. I was looking for a vehicle that travelled eastbound, first through the N6 toll and then through the M4 toll, going in towards Dublin. A particular registration had caught my eye. I checked to see who the owner of the vehicle was that went through both tolls, and that person's name was Graham Dwyer. Another phone had been bought for the sole purposes of contacting Elaine O'Hara. The phone had been registered in what appeared to be a false name, Garoon Kaishalm. For every single day that the Garoon phone and the master phone were active, I looked at the cell sites used by these phones and the cell sites used by Graham Dwyer's work phone. Everywhere the Garoon phone and the master phone went, Graham Dwyer's personal phone went as well.
In this footage, you will see that as he enters, Graham Dwyer is looking at a mobile phone. He's here at the lift now, and you can clearly see the face of the phone lighting up. He puts that phone away, and he then fumbles in his pockets, and he takes out a more modern phone. Looks like an iPhone or something like that, and he enters the lift. We were able to match up the timing of this CCTV footage and that phone receiving a text at that exact time.
The cell site analysis corroborated what was seen on CCTV. We had times when a male who appears to be Graham Dwyer is coming in and out of Elaine O'Hara's apartment building, and when this happened, we see the phones linked to Graham Dwyer using cell sites in the same area. The fact that Graham Dwyer had been identified as the user of 2 separate phones believed to have been in contact with Elaine O'Hara was a huge step forward.
"4 weeks since the discovery of Elaine's body, I now believed we had enough evidence to arrest Graham Dwyer. We held a conference in Blackrock Garda Station in the incident room. Peter was the designated arresting officer.
Ultimately, Graham Dwyer was a violent person, capable of violence. So the concern was then, might we be in a siege situation when they go to move to the arrest and there's a potentially family in that house? There was this dichotomy going on where he was engaging in one lifestyle with Elaine and a different lifestyle in his work and his home life. So he could compartmentalise. My opinion was he would submit to the arrest willingly and there wouldn't be any aggression.
On the morning that they're going to do the arrest, surveillance is watching him, so they have him housed. They know exactly where he's going to be the next morning at 7 o'clock, where his family are. The police hit his house, they hit his office. It was all done with military precision.
I arrived at Graham Dwyer's home in Fox Rock shortly after 7 a.m. I rang the doorbell. I noticed a male came down the stairs. He immediately went back up the stairs. I got a little bit worried at that point that he may try to escape. However, my fears were allayed when a number of seconds later he came back with the keys and opened the door and let us in. I immediately tell him that I'm arresting him for the murder of Elaine O'Hara. His reaction was that he didn't know anything about it.
From the moment he met them, he was arrogant. He was fighting back. I'm cleverer than you. But one of the very interesting things about it, I always found, was that while his wife never said that she'd ever come across the monster, she never ever saw him again after that day. She wanted absolutely nothing to do with him ever again.
So I told Graham Dwyer to get dressed because I was taking him back to Blackrock Garda Station for an interview. The first time you meet somebody, people will make up their mind about you. They will decide whether they are willing to engage with you or not. I am trying to immediately build rapport with the suspect to get engagement with him in the interview room.
On the day that Graham Dwyer was arrested, I was in possession of a search warrant to search his workplace. I went there with a large team of detectives and computer crime experts. We gathered everyone, all the employees, into a boardroom, and I explained to them that their colleague, Graham Dwyer, had just been arrested for murder. It was very tense. There was tears. There was disbelief. There was anger. How dare we suggest such a thing, that this person that they knew so well, how could we suggest that he was capable of committing such a heinous crime? One lady got up and started assaulting the guards, told us to get out of the office. And how dare we suggest such a thing? From dealing with people in the office, his professional colleagues, some people looked at him as the ultimate professional, the perfect colleague. Others had less favourable things to say about him. Some, in fact, expressed a fear of him that was expressed directly to me. This particular person had a disagreement with him. Graham Dwyer's reaction to her really frightened her. She did not want to be in the same room with him alone.
We only have a maximum of 24 hours to interview Graham Dwyer. At the end of the 24 hours, the Director of Public Prosecutions makes the decision whether to charge Graham Dwyer with murder or not. We have to have a strategy in relation to an interview process. All the evidence has to be put to the person in the interview room.
We still had no cause of death, so the interviews were critical in the investigation, in that it was very important that we could corroborate the information in the text messages and the CCTV footage to get a charge of murder. Garda Geraldine Noon is a qualified psychologist, and we requested that she prepare a psychological profile of Graham Dwyer. We were hoping that she would identify psychological vulnerabilities and behavioural patterns that may assist in the interview process.
That psychological profile started long before we knew we were dealing with Graham Dwyer, because we were analysing all of those text messages. It was very clear from the communication between himself and Elaine, we're dealing with somebody who is very callous, very indifferent to anybody else, completely lacking in empathy, completely focused on his own desires, his own behaviours, very dismissive of Elaine and any of her feelings, but also completely lacking in fear or lacking any self-awareness around what he was doing or what other people might know about it. He certainly tried to cover his tracks, but he was also very fearless. We could see from video footage that he was visiting her apartment, knowing there was cameras there, very aware of that. Very poor impulse control, very high on goal-focused, callous behaviour, all high psychopathic traits.
In Ireland at the time, having a solicitor present during the course of the interview was not a legal requirement. However, Graham Dwyer was afforded numerous opportunities to consult with his solicitor during the course of his detention.
My first sighting of him was in the interview room. I was monitoring it live.
The first question I ask is,
did you know Elaine O'Hara?
I didn't kill anybody.
He didn't say he didn't know her, or he didn't say he didn't know her. He would only talk about what he knew from the media and not anything that would connect him directly to Elaine O'Hara personally. It appeared to me that he wanted to distance himself from Elaine O'Hara.
He was being quite cooperative, very humble. His mindset really early on was, I've got this, and it's just a matter of me putting you right on this, and I'll be back out and going about normal business very early on. That was the key thing that stood out for me. He was playing to the psychopathic traits playbook.
It was very, very important that we could corroborate the information on the text messages in relation to his presence at particular locations. It was our belief that Graham Dwyer was a narcissistic individual, in that he loved to talk about himself. So I discussed his hobbies, and he freely spoke about his main hobby, which is flying model airplanes. He gave us quite a bit of detail about where he was flying and how many competitions he was involved in. This all corroborated the evidence that was available on the text messages between the master phone and Elaine O'Hara. One of the text messages said, looking forward to getting a new bike, must get fit for the murder. 2 days later, a further text message said, got my new bike, cycled in 10 minutes faster. We asked Graham Dwyer about his work. In a conversational way, we say to him,
Do you sit in that traffic every day going into work?
I tried cycling into work and it's 10 minutes faster.
So he corroborates exactly that this text message that he sent to Elaine O'Hara matched what he says in the interview.
He thought they were innocuous topics. It was only much later in the interview that he realised actually they were linked to something else. The penny did drop and he did say to Peter, "Oh my God, that's why you asked me those things earlier."
The first interview connected Graham Dwyer beyond a shadow of a doubt to the sending of the text messages. Between interviews, he would be placed in a cell. He's not allowed to communicate with anybody other than his solicitor. He has the right to go to sleep at 12 midnight. At that time, if he wants to sleep at 12 midnight, the clock stops. He declined and kept going right until 7 a.m. the following morning.
While Graham Dwyer was being questioned in the Garda station about this murder, the news was beginning to leak out. And while Dwyer's solicitor was coming to the Garda station to be with his client, he got a push notification on his mobile phone from the Irish National Broadcaster saying that a married architect was being questioned about the murder of Elaine O'Hara. Obviously, he raised issues about this immediately.
This really annoyed Graham Dwyer. He was very concerned that he was associated with the murder of Elaine O'Hara. The following interview was very difficult. It was hard to build rapport with him again.
I don't want to be on any tabloids. Even if I was remotely associated with this, I'd jump in the river. If I couldn't have my wife's trust or my job.
Just because you're arrested doesn't mean you're guilty.
We're not dealing with our ordinary criminal here. This is a completely different level. A very fragile ego, but a very grandiose sense of self. Potentially secretly delighted or proud of the crimes he was engaged in, but also protective in terms of ensuring he didn't implicate himself in that. There's this balance constantly between managing that fragile personality and still add value to the investigation by conducting a really productive interview where he's engaging in a narrative, where he's providing an account. So there are really an awful lot of things to consider.
Do you know anything about master and slave?
Not at this time. I'm thinking about my wife and kids. I didn't kill anyone, I know that.
As the text messages were read over, he kept saying, please stop reading them.
Isn't it true you derive sexual gratification from stabbing?
I don't want to talk about my sex life. Please stop.
You have a stabbing fetish, don't you?
The investigation team recovered a laptop at Graham Dwyer's home. It was discovered that on the night before he was arrested, he had been viewing snuff movies involved in the evisceration of the body of a female.
What had you been watching at home last night?
Horror movies.
I wouldn't call it horror. Describe it to me.
Horror scenes from horror movies. Erotic horror, a sort of art to do with horror. Please stop. I'm thinking of my wife and kids. My private life is my private life. Please stop. I'm mortified to describe it. I didn't kill anybody. I'm not guilty of any crime.
How would you get sexual pleasure from that kind of material?
I don't know. I believe you're trying to shock me, upset me. There are some things I can't explain.
When Graham Dwyer was arrested, Gardaí were obviously trying to get as much evidence as they could. And one of the people they spoke to was his ex-partner. She told Gardaí that when they first met, they had a good relationship, but as the relationship developed, he started to express this desire to have knives involved in sex. And it started off with him bringing the knife and putting it beside the bed, and eventually moved on to him wanting to have it in his hand.
He was physically shocked that that information was available to us.
Graham Dwyer stated that she wouldn't be at all friendly to him because of the adversarial nature of the relationship in recent times. As part of the interview strategy, we start from the weakest piece of evidence to the strongest. So we build up the pressure as it goes along. The Gardaí from the underwater unit carried out a detailed search of the Vartry Reservoir. They recovered a rucksack. There were knives, handcuffs. These were all found in the area where the keys belonging to Elaine O'Hara were recovered.
So this footage that I'm showing you now is footage of Graham Dwyer entering the complex. He goes up to Elaine's apartment, but when he's leaving, he's carrying a black and red coloured rucksack. A rucksack very similar to the one that was found in the Vartry Reservoir.
The rucksack appeared to match in every way a rucksack that was recovered at Vartry Reservoir.
The rucksack found in the reservoir was a critical piece of evidence. It had been described in the text messages as the kill bag, and it was necessary for us to get an admission from Graham Dwyer in relation to the rucksack. This could confirm his involvement in the disposal of items in the reservoir that are crucial to the investigation.
The rucksack is hugely significant because it could be linked to him and to Elaine, and having him provide some kind of narrative around it was essential.
One of his work colleagues had said that the CCTV footage was most definitely him. He had seen Graham Dwyer bring the bag into work. I asked him,
Why would your work colleague say that was you in the CCTV?
Because it is me. Elaine O'Hara owns that bag. That is Elaine's bag. She used to keep BDSM gear in it. She used to meet men for BDSM things.
and that was the first time that Graham Dwyer accepted he was in a relationship with Elaine O'Hara.
Securing an admission from Graham Dwyer during the interview regarding the rucksack is a pivotal turning point.
When I showed him the bag and the knives that were recovered from the Vartry Reservoir, he accepted that he had used those knives in BDSM activity with Elaine O'Hara in her apartment.
I suppose I wanted to meet her because I was stuck. We met a few times over the years. She wanted to be chained up, tied up. There was a point when she would cut herself and there would be fresh blood. I am fascinated with all that, but it's not a turn-on. At one stage, she asked me if I would kill her. I knew she was sad. There was a cycle, there were patterns of depression.
She asked you to kill her.
Years ago.
Is that a fantasy of yours?
I would say no. It's in horror movies. It's not in BDSM.
He appeared to have taken a calculated gamble in admitting that he was in a BDSM relationship with Elaine O'Hara, hoping that this narrative would bolster the claim that she had taken her own life. There was no cause of death. Elaine O'Hara was suicidal, and he was in a consensual BDSM relationship with her.
That he was blaming Elaine for his desire to inflict harm on her and to be aggressive towards her. Those were the patterns of behaviour that were very evident and did indeed play out again in the interview.
The bag ended up in the reservoir beside her car keys and the phones.
I can't explain that. You have been suggesting stuff all day and I have been on my toes. I didn't kill Elaine O'Hara.
He had been in contact with his solicitor during the night on the phone, and he did not believe that he would be charged. He thought that he was going to finish up with the interview process and get out of the station the following morning.
One of the predictions that I did make was that he would underestimate the investigation in general and underestimate the interview team because of this grandiose sense of self that he might have. Everybody is a bit more stupid than him.
I believed that Graham Dwyer was a narcissist. I believed that he felt that he could talk his way out of this.
I'm not guilty of the offence that I'm being presented with. From what I've heard today, there are other people you should talk to as well as me. And that has not been done, in my opinion.
What people?
Anybody else like me who has been in contact with Elaine O'Hara. That's all I have to say.
The consultations were ongoing between the senior investigating officers and the Director of Public Prosecutions. Graham Dwyer had to be released from the station at 7:08 a.m.
Graham Dwyer thought he was going home, that he had actually outsmarted the guards.
Just as the time was about to expire, a direction came through from the Director of Public Prosecutions, and I told him,
Graham Dwyer, I'm charging you with the murder of Elaine O'Hara.
He was in absolute disbelief that he was charged with murder.
Detectives escorting Graham Dwyer, the 41-year-old architect from Foxrock in South County Dublin, had been questioned for 24 hours about the murder of Elaine O'Hara.
News that a man like this had been arrested for the murder of Elaine O'Hara caused shockwaves. This was a man who was Mr. Everyman. He was part of the struggling middle classes. He was a professional. His wife was a professional. They had children. People could never have imagined that this was the kind of life he was living.
He had a normal job, he had a normal family. All intents and purposes, he was just an ordinary man. He walked among us, he walked among normal society, and nobody knew who he was and what he was capable of.
When Graham Dwyer is charged with murder, he's remanded in custody. So the pressure comes on immediately. We have got to prove the case. Every piece of information has to be examined for anything that's of evidential value.
Despite the fact that we had a murder charge preferred against Graham Dwyer, we still didn't have a cause of death. So we needed to search for further evidence to support our case.
There was no direct cause of death, and there has never been a direct cause of death from the pathologist. The cause of death had to be established from the set of circumstantial evidence that was available. We had to keep on looking for information.
At the time of Graham Dwyer's arrest, lots of searches were conducted simultaneously. Phones, his hard drives, lots of other relevant material was seized.
On some of the hard drives, video footage was deleted, but it was recovered by the Computer Crime Investigation Unit.
The videos that the Gardaí found on Graham Dwyer's devices were disturbing and bizarre.
So there was video content of his involvement with several other women, including Elaine O'Hara. The video content was extremely graphic. It showed Graham Dwyer stabbing women while having sexual intercourse with them.
You could hear the women. Sometimes they were crying. Sometimes they were muffled cries of upset and of hurt. These videos were so crucial because they showed that Graham Dwyer was acting on his desires. He was actually finding women. He was stabbing them while having sex, and he was filming himself doing it.
It was really important to identify the females in the videos to ensure that they were alive and to see if the activity was consensual. The females that are depicted in the videos, we have spoken to them in relation to the investigation. It's clear that it was not consensual in the videos.
One significant piece of information from that hard drive was a story he seemed to have created about murdering a specific woman who he had contact with in the United States.
It was really important to identify and speak to her because the information in the short story was extremely similar to what actually happened to Elaine O'Hara. It talked about how she would come to Ireland, how he would bring her up the mountains and he would slice her open with a knife, having sex with her as she died.
He had another victim in his sights for bloodletting and potentially murder.
This was a hugely anticipated trial.
Obviously, everybody was talking about this. It was a huge case. An architect, you know, a seemingly respectable person had been charged with murder. It was big, big news.
It didn't conform to the normal issues that arise in a murder trial. It involved bondage, alternative sexual practices, it involved stabbing, it involved a huge host of coincidences. The likes of it had never been seen before in Ireland.
The public is fascinated and repulsed in equal amounts when it comes to a horrific murder. This is different. This is beyond the pale.
The trial took place in courtroom number 13 in the Criminal Courts of Justice.
The members of the public and members of the media queued to get into court every day. There was such a tension. You had to reserve seats for the family in particular.
The trial stretched over 9 grueling weeks, forcing the family to sit through intimate and painful revelations about Elaine's private life, reliving the harrowing experiences that she had endured in excruciating detail.
This was going to be a very difficult trial. It was based almost entirely on circumstantial evidence.
There is some evidence, but there is no DNA is gone. We don't know cause of death. So if you don't know somebody's cause of death, how can you say they were murdered? Which is a major hurdle for the prosecution to cross.
I think Graham Dwyer was absolutely convinced that he would be found not guilty. He walked in as if he was doing a day's work. He was treating it almost like a show. The whole point of the prosecution case was to prove that the person who was in touch with Elaine O'Hara was Graham Dwyer. He was denying that.
My role in the trial was to present the information gathered by the investigation teams. That's the information from the network records, from the text messages, from the CCTV, and to combine it all together. The goal of this was to show that Graham Dwyer was the only person who could have been using both the Garoon phone and the master phone, and to show that this person was the person who murdered Elaine O'Hara.
So I remember the horror of what was done, the horror of the manipulation and harassment and psychological warfare perpetrated on Elaine O'Hara, who was a vulnerable woman. We could hear Elaine's voice through the text messages. So we were able to see her scared on many occasions, vulnerable, sometimes fighting back, sometimes feisty, or making fun of Graham Dwyer. You were rooting for her all the way through the text messages. You were actually kind of going, come on, Elaine, don't give in. Don't give him the code to your apartment. Don't go back. Don't meet him. Even though you knew she was going to do it. I remember looking at Elaine O'Hara's family and seeing the absolute distress and horror that they were going through. The sorrow and tragedy was written all over their faces.
I felt so sorry for her family that were there every day. They were so loyal to her. This was so manipulative and so planned and so sickening, you know, and it played out in slow motion.
Another moment that was very disturbing was the reading of this story about the young American woman with whom Graham Dwyer had been in contact on the internet. He sank down in his seat. If he could have sunk through a hole in the floor, he would have. Almost trying to get out of sight completely. He was going red in the face. He was embarrassed.
Agreement had been reached with the lady in America that she would fly over. It was significant evidence in that it showed Graham Dwyer's desire to bring a woman to a secluded area and to stab and kill her. It also showed the deviousness of Graham Dwyer in that he had also sent a Christmas card to this lady in the US from his prison cell to tell her that he was aware that she was a witness in the trial, intimidating her and letting her know that he knew where she lived. As a result of the intimidation, she was in fear of coming to Ireland. So an application was made to the High Court. The lady from the US gave evidence by video link.
It was hugely impactful. She was quite young, and you could tell she was kind of vulnerable person. She was upset, but she was very courageous too, you know. She seemed very, very truthful. But she didn't find it easy given the evidence, but, you know, she did it. She was very, very impressive.
A lot of our discussions were about similar fantasies, and
we basically discussed him ending my life. I didn't actually have the courage to kill myself or anything, but he was there and he listened and he offered a solution. He talks about getting separate cell phones for communication. He did mention Elaine O'Hara. I knew that they had an intimate relationship, but he said that we were similar in that we were both suicidal and that he used to cut her. He wanted to kill her and then come after me. He would have me meet him someplace, and from there he would drive me to a location, and basically from there he would have sex with me and cut my throat until I lost consciousness.
The young woman was cross-examined by lawyers for Graham Dwyer about her mental health, whether or not she was telling the truth about what had happened. It was being suggested to her that this was an online fantasy, that they were both involved.
Yeah, I didn't know he was being serious. If I had known he was being serious, I would have done something. I would have reported it.
The trial judge, Mr. Justice Hunt, was reluctant to play the videos from the hard drives, but having viewed them himself, he decided that it was relevant.
The moment where they showed the videos to the court was upsetting and distressing.
They were just horrendous. In the video, that he is hurting the women during sexual intercourse. He's stabbing them. I can still hear the screams, like they were distressed. The women were all distressed. And he was enjoying it. Towards the end of the prosecution case, you could kind of feel that it was building and building and building. It was just, you could feel it.
The prosecution spoke about the fact that Elaine O'Hara was preyed on by Graham Dwyer. He was able to manipulate her mind by this constant haranguing on text message, and he was able to get her to a situation where, by taking her to a remote area, for somebody who was already in a vulnerable mental state, he knew that there was a chance that her death would be classed as suicide.
A huge part of his defence was that these relationships were essentially fantasy. When the judge was charging the jury, he was going back through the evidence again. He was of the view that if they were not convinced that Graham Dwyer was the owner of the master phone, the burner phone, that if they weren't certain that he was the person that was communicating with Elaine O'Hara, that they should acquit him, they should go no further.
The jury were deliberating for more than 7 hours. There was a very tense atmosphere in court. Nobody knew what the verdict would be. People were saying, will the circumstantial evidence be enough? There is no murder weapon. Will the jury find that they can't make that leap to convict him of murder?
Every trial I've ever been involved in, there's always a tension when the jury are out. You don't know what way a jury are reacting to certain pieces of evidence.
I was on a lower floor and I just started to see people start to run back towards the court, and then my phone started to ring. One of my colleagues was saying, this verdict was due, get back. He was brought back in.
There was a lot of tension. Elaine O'Hara's family were there, gathered, waiting to see what would happen. Eventually, the jury came back and said that they had a verdict.
The pressure was so intense.
They gave their verdict of guilty to the court. There was a gasp of relief from the O'Hara family. Graham Dwyer seemed quite surprised. He closed his eyes. It seemed that he was not expecting this verdict.
The chief investigator, Peter Woods, broke down crying, leant over me and got hold of Frank O'Hara's hand, her father. It was a huge moment.
My thoughts, most definitely, were for Frank O'Hara and the siblings. We had a nice meeting with them in the family room afterwards, where we expressed that emotion.
The help we received from all the other disciplines within the Garda organisation was absolutely phenomenal. Every one of them played their part in bringing Graham Dwyer to justice.
There was a sentencing hearing then held around a month later where victim impact evidence was given. Her father, Frank, showed a picture of Elaine. He described her as somebody who had a great love for children, who wanted more than anything to work with children, and who had worked towards getting her degree in Montessori, but unfortunately didn't live to see that degree awarded to her. And he spoke about the effect this had had on the family, the circumstances and the horror of it.
You had this very vulnerable young woman whose family tried to do everything they possibly could to help her and save her. And she got into the clutches of this predatory monster.
The judge imposed a mandatory life sentence on Graham Dwyer.
In Ireland, A life sentence does not mean you're going to spend the rest of your life in prison. In actual fact, you can apply for parole.
Graham Dwyer has fought against his conviction for the best part of a decade, and obviously this has had a huge effect on the family. It has never gone away.
It is unimaginable what pain and trauma the O'Hara family has had to endure, denying them the opportunity to put any semblance of closure to the case. In actual fact, I don't believe there will be closure for the O'Hara family. As Frank O'Hara said, it's their life sentence, and there is no parole for them.
One of the unusual things about this case is there was a real sense of the presence of Elaine O'Hara. The sense of her from beyond the grave, trying to lead people to the perpetrator.
If ever I saw a case where the bones of the dead cried out for justice, it was the bones of Elaine O'Hara.
Finally, she got justice after lying there in Kilkee Mountains for 13 months, thought to be missing, thought to have taken her own life. The person who was responsible for her murder was brought to justice in the end.
I thought